Hi everyone, this is Guru from Adobe, and today we're going to look at how to design, prototype, and share using the apps in the Creative Cloud. Now, the apps that I'm going to be using today for this tutorial are Adobe CC, which is a mobile application on Android as well as iOS. I'm going to be running that off my iPad, and we're going to be building the wireframes in there. And then, since there's no direct plug into Adobe XD as of this recording, so we are going to be routing it through Illustrator. So we're going to be taking it into Illustrator, and then from Illustrator bring those into XD. And once we have the wireframes in XD, we then will add the images in there, the final copy text, and then we'll create a prototype and then share it with the relevant stakeholders. So let me actually show you what app we're going to be building today. So if you look here, this is an app for basically for surfers. It's a prototype for surfers that helps them, find different surf spots, like you can see here. And then once you choose a spot, it'll then recommend certain instructors who are nearby who could then help you with the surfing. So if I were to click on one of these guys, it'll take me to the instructor page where I can see some details about the instructor. And then if I wanted to book this guy, I can click on that, and then the instructor is booked. And after I'm done, if I want to head back, I can just click on Let's Surf, and that brings me back to the home page. So this is the app. It's a 5-page app, pretty simple. And we're going to put this together from scratch using CC, Illustrator, and Adobe XD. So on that note, let's start with CC. So for those of you who are new to COM, let me just give you a little bit of a introduction here. So COM basically is an application that allows you to create wireframes, or you could create mock-ups of your design. And it's not only restricted to application design. You could also do print or web or social kind of formats are supported. And there's also an option down here, if you notice, where you can also add custom formats for screens that are that are not included here. We're going to be building this app for the iPhone 6/7, so I'm going to select that format, and this is the workspace that I get introduced to. Now within here, you can use gestures to include various components. For example, let's say if I wanted to have an image frame up here, so what I need to do is draw an X, and that creates a rectangular image frame. Similarly, if I make a circle with an X on top, that creates a circular image frame. You can also create text here, so I can create headline text like that with that gesture. There's also an option to, for example, change the font. You could download typekit fonts in here and use any of the typekit fonts if you wanted to. And you can also adjust the other things like the font size and the alignment and so on and so forth. If you want to delete anything, you can just draw a squiggly line around it, and that gets rid of that particular asset. You can also create rectangle frames like this, and of different sizes and shapes, and there's actually there's also some predefined shapes that you could use directly if you wanted to. Some other handy feature within this app is, especially when you're doing UX work, there's going to be a lot of copies of things that you're going to have to create. So in order to create any copies here, you just select your particular object that you want to get copied or text, and then you could just draw these plus signs, and then they would make additional copies. But of course, you know, by doing this, we've ruined the alignment. So in order to fix the alignment, what you can do is you can select multiple objects and then use the align panel like you would in Illustrator or Photoshop. So the way you do that is you can either come in here and you can choose select multiple objects, and that will then allow you to add to the selection. Or if you just wanted to do it using a gesture, you could actually just draw a selection like that. And I think the trick here is to ensure that you at least circle it until, you know, spiral it until you get that you know, dotted line, and then you notice that you have the alignment panel down here, and I can use that to distribute them and make sure that they are well aligned. So that's you could also select multiple objects and group them. So for example, let's say if I had some text here and let's say a title, and then maybe another one down here, but maybe the size is a little smaller, something like that. You could select multiple objects in this way, and you could also group them. So now they are essentially one selection, and you could also ungroup them if you wanted to. So it's pretty handy, you know, in terms of when you're trying to create like a mock-up here. You can also get some help about the gestures by coming down here and looking at the gesture help dialog, and this is where you can click on any of these gestures and it will show you how you could be drawing, for example, to create paragraph text, or if you wanted to erase something, or if you wanted to draw a line, and so on and so forth. The good thing about this app is that it's got a direct plug to all of our well, most of our Creative Cloud applications. XD isn't here as yet. The other thing that you can do is you can create mockups as well, auto mockups right here, and I could directly mail these to the client to, you know, to get some feedback before I start work. Or if that is not the case, I could directly come in here and send these send these designs to Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign or Muse. I'm going to be sending it to Illustrator because that's where I'm then going to be taking that into XD. So let me just open that project. So here you see, you know, I've created wireframes for each of those app pages, and basically I'm going to be sending these over to Illustrator. So it's as simple as getting these open and then coming out there and saying send to Illustrator, and as soon as you do that, it will upload this to the Creative Cloud and then open up this very file on your desktop within Illustrator. So you can see Illustrator opening up right there, and any moment now it will then open up this particular file. Simultaneously I could have the next page sent to Illustrator as well. So let me do that. So there you go, that's the first one right there, and you notice it's each of those objects are a separate on a separate layer right here. Actually they're on the same layer, but they're separate objects that we can select and make changes to, which is great. So I've already assembled this, so let me just get my assemble file open. So there you go, you can see all of the pages right here. Now what I'd like to do is take these designs into XD and start putting this app together. So let's come to XD here, and I'm actually going to open up a new file. Let's say iPhone 6.7 should be fine. And then within here, now if some of you are new to XD, let me just give you a quick introduction here. So as you can see, this the user interface is quite clutter free, if I may say so. And you'd also notice that you've got all your artboard parameters right here in this this properties dialog here, and then you've also got an option to add a grid if you want. I can add a square grid. You can also use some of the drawing tools, like for example, there's the rectangle tool there. It's got its own fill, and one of the new features that was added was also the ability to do gradients, so you can now add gradients here as well. There's also an option to add hex values, as well as saving those hex values here if you wanted to, by saving the color swatch if you're going to be using it again and again. Then the other thing worth noting here is if you're using the pen tool, it's slightly different to what you might be used to in some of the other apps, and it's good in a way that you don't need to be switching between different tools if you want to make adjustments to the curve, which is great. And it's also pretty intuitive, so at any point I can go back, make changes. I can press the option and change the handles in a certain way if I wanted to, and so on and so forth. Anyways, so you've got all of that, all of those drawing tools, and you've the text tool is something worth pointing out here. There's different types of text that you can create. So if you just single click and then type, so let's say Adobe, and what this creates is this kind of a title, and if you were to scale that up, you notice how it's scaling up the text as well. You can see the value changing up there. But if you wanted to create paragraph text, then this is not the behavior that you would expect. So for paragraph text, what you need to do is just come down here and just click and drag using the text tool, and that creates some paragraph text, which you can then just kind of fill up like that. And this particular text box, on increasing or decreasing, you notice it does not scale or scale up or down the text. So this is something that I think everyone should know about the text tool. The other things I'm going to showcase as we get along and as we start building up this app. So there's 5 pages here. Let's get the pages in here. So I'm going to take the artboard tool and start building up some more pages. Maybe I can just alt click here and just make a copy. Oops, sorry. Alt shift, and need another one, and I'm going to take another one. Some of these pages are a bit longer, so this is going to be spots nearby. This is going to be spot details, and this one's going to be instructor details or whatever. Okay, and I also need an instructor booked page, but I'll just duplicate this one because they're very similar. Okay, so let's come back here, and I'm actually gonna come in here and head into Illustrator, select all of these guys. Now if you remember, one of the things that if you are going to be using this workflow, I might as well tell you about this one thing that you should sort of understand, is that in comp, right? So let me just take a new page here. Okay, so in comp, there's 2 kinds of image frames that you essentially placeholders that you can create for images. There's the image frame, which is this one right here, and this is what a proper image frame looks like within this application. But you could also use a rectangle for as a placeholder for images. And the reason why I prefer using a rectangle rather than an image frame is that with a rectangle you get an option to control the stroke, as you can see right here. While as with image frames, for some reason they automatically come with a stroke, and many times within Illustrator then you'd have to remove this stroke manually. So if you're fine with it, that's cool. Otherwise, if you definitely do not want to have a stroke, then what you want to make sure is you create rectangles. One more point here is when you're working with different shapes and you want to create overlapping objects, then basically lock a certain object so that when you draw on top of that object, it basically it ignores it. Otherwise, it becomes a little difficult to work with. To unlock it, you'll notice that up here you've got an indication showing that you've got some locked objects. You just say unlock all, and then your object would be unlocked. There you go. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to just point that out before I started here. So these are all, well, most of them are mostly rectangles that have been created within CC. Anyways, coming here, I'm going to paste that. Now you notice it doesn't come in exactly as intended, so you might need to scoot some over a little bit. And let's get in this page. And you notice this one's a little small, so let's go back to the artboard tool and just pull that guy about there. I know this one's going to be long as well, so I'll just, in anticipation, pull that up to about there. I think should be enough. And then let's come back here and let's select all of these guys, copy that, make sure nothing is locked, and then come back here and paste them. And I'm going to do the same for the last page as well. Okay. Now, another thing to point out here is that obviously when you've got these laid out, you can align them using the align tools. As you can see up here, you can use them as all the artboards can be aligned. And another thing to point out here is that when you copy paste stuff from Illustrator, especially these designs, they come in grouped. So you notice everything is grouped, and if I want to select any individual object, I've got to double click or sometimes triple click depending on the hierarchy, select the object and then make whatever changes I want to. So but there is a way to ungroup it. So you can either go under object here and select ungroup, or just press Command Shift G, and I think that should be Control Shift G on Windows, and that will basically ungroup everything. So there you go. So I'll do the same to all of these guys here. Okay, now that that is done, let's start populating some of the assets in here. So I'm just make that a little small, and then I'm gonna get open the Finder, and these are where my assets are. So first thing I'm gonna need is a background. So look at that home background in there. Perfect. Of course we need the logo as well. So let's get the SVG logo to fall in right there. Sweet. The next thing that I want to do is let's come on to the second page right here. Now of course there's additional things that I need to add in here, like the UI components, which we'll add a little later. Let's just finish up with this one. So here I'm going to come in here and find that background, and then of course I'm going to need the logo as well. And you notice there's an avatar placeholder right there, so drag that avatar in there. Okay, perfect. Just a couple of things, might want to just move that over. but maybe make it a little smaller. I know that the hamburger menu is going to be coming up, or sorry, the back menu is going to be coming up right there. So I'm just going to place some things a little bit. Okay, perfect. The next thing that I need is I need a pin here, you know, on like a map pin. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some of these drawing tools. So let's actually take a circle, and then I'm going to change that fill there to take that pen tool, select one of these colors, make it a little lighter, something like that, and change the border to white, maybe make that a little thicker. And if you double click, you can then modify the points. So I'll just pull that one, and we have a pin. So let's add some text inside there. Okay, and this has got to be bold. Make that a little smaller until it fits perfectly. Okay, and then I'm going to select both of these and Command G or Control G on Windows to group them. And okay, let's say you are somewhere around here on the beach. Maybe make that a little bigger. Okay, so the next thing, I need to drop in these kind of store points, so locators. So it's going to be one there. Let's call this 0, 1. And then let's change that to that, and center that. Okay, and then maybe I can make that, or you know what, maybe it should be that color. So, okay, so or let's actually, you know what, let me show you something here. So I'm going to set that to gray. Okay, the other thing worth pointing out here is I forgot to mention about this earlier, is that you've also got layers that are created here for each artboard as such. So these are, I've got like 4 different artboards, and if you look here, I've got all of those 4 artboards named, and if I were to double click on any one of them, it opens up all of the contents, all of the layers within that artboard. So this is where you can, for example, lock or hide certain layers if you wanted to, or adjust the layer order as well. There's also an option for creating symbols, or recording or setting up your character styles or colors, so that you could make global changes across your artboards, you know, for text, fonts and things like that. So let's actually use this as and convert. I'm going to group that and take that in as a symbol, and then I'm going to just pull these into, let's say, one here, and another one somewhere around here. Okay, so this is going to be 2, this one's got to be 3, and that's 4. Okay, and now the other thing about symbols is that, now you notice if I come here and make a change to that border color, so if I, for example, pick that color, you notice how it changes throughout the symbols, and all of the so-called child symbols are also now the same color. So this is the advantage of using symbols. Okay, now let's look at something else. So here we have a bunch of these list items. Let's actually delete these. I won't need these. I've got a better way of doing that in here. Just adjust that a bit. Say something like that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select these, all of them, and say Command G to group them. Actually, you don't have to group them. Let me ungroup that. And I'll just come down to repeat grid, and then this allows me to then make 1, 2, 3, 4 copies of that. And I can also adjust the spacing between these copies. I can, if I wanted more on the right, you notice that I've got, of course I don't want that right now, but you could make copies in that direction as well. Okay, so it's not only making copies, but let's say, for example, you need to populate, I need to get those beach, I need to get those beach names in there, as well as the images to showcase. So let's take these images right here, and I'm just going to click drag it on there. It automatically brings them in. I also have a text file with the beach names in there, so I can just click drag them, and then those are the beach names. And these are just entries with an enter between them, between each of those entries. And then I also need to put in the wave conditions. So I believe this one's the wave conditions, and then I need the wave sizes, and there you go. The other thing that I need is I need those the star rating here, which is not in here. So now this is where you could do two things. You could either come down to Illustrator and take a new file in here, and then I could, since it's very it's integrated with Illustrator, so I could just create like any shape in here, and essentially, let's say, and I can then copy that, come into XD, and then just paste it. So for example, get it in here, just paste it in there, and obviously that's way too huge, so let's fix that. Okay, it's right there. Okay, and just scale that down, and you notice that because I've pasted this asset within this group, so it's within the repeat grid group, so that's one of the reasons why you see it repeated all throughout. Now I could select this and then directly come down to repeat grid. Actually, this has got to be up here. That's one of the reasons why I left that space. Then come down to repeat grid, and I can just pull that out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I can adjust the spacing like I showed you earlier. I can also adjust the size of this thing, so maybe I want to make that really tiny. Oops. Okay. Okay, so some reason it's showing me an outline there, which is strange. Anyways, this is one way to do this. The other way of doing this is by using the UI kit. So if you come down to File, you'll notice there's an option to get different UI kits. Whether you're designing for Android or for iOS, you could pick the right UI kit for you. And let me show you what they look like. So I think I have it right. Okay, there you go. So this is what the UI kit looks like. So it's got a whole bunch of different things that you could just copy paste from here and use it within your design. So I am interested in stealing the star. So actually let's come in here and of course I can also set repeat grid here, scale that down. Something like that. Okay, so that's how you can create something like that. Maybe that's a little too tiny. Maybe I should take these. So you can always replace or make any changes to, if I can select it, to the design as you wish, and it would conform with the remaining entries as well. Okay, so that was the page 2. Now let's head over to page 3 right here. So this one again requires a few things. So let me get the assets. Okay, there you go. So I'm gonna need the Cardiff Beach, so let's get that in there. For the for the avatar, I'm gonna delete that. Just gonna copy it, come in here and say paste. That's pretty much where I wanted it to be. And then what else do I need? Okay, then down here I need to actually, I'm gonna get rid of these guys, and I'm gonna get rid of this one as well. I don't need these. There you go. And I think by now you know why I don't need oops, I definitely need that one. So let's see. Okay, I think that's the group. So let me just select that and ungroup it. Okay, perfect. So now I can select all of these guys. I need that star rating in here as well. So I'm actually gonna come in here, and maybe that is a little too tiny. Let's make that a little bigger. Okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna select that. And get that in here. Okay, so just make sure everything is aligned well. Okay, perfect. Well, I could always make changes to that later on as well. The other thing that I wanted to do here was I wanted to add a border, or let's make that change later. Okay, so let's say I select these guys then, and again I'm gonna go back to repeat grid, and then I'm gonna make another copy on this side. Now that's going slightly off, so let's actually adjust that, something like that. And maybe I can place this in the center. Okay, and I also want to make sure, especially if you're going to be adding strokes, you want to make sure that you don't you keep this offset a little from the top, from the edge of the repeat grid. Otherwise the stroke that you add is just going to be occluded there, so just be careful about that. Now I need more copies of this, so like I showed you earlier, I'm just going to click and drag and there you go. I've got multiple copies. Let's make 6 of these, and okay, let's make 6, and maybe I want to place them a little distance. Okay, that looks great. Okay, and then the other thing that I want to do is actually let me just select that and reduce that size a bit. Okay, and the other thing that I want to get in here are the images. So let's find our instructors. There they are. These are actually guys from the XD team, so get them in there, and I also need to get in the instructor names. That's where that is, and there you go. I've got the instructor names, and then I believe their rates are included as well. Perfect. So that's how quickly you can put things together using using XD. And maybe actually, okay, you know what, maybe I'm going to select that, and I'm actually going to add a border slightly different. Okay, something like that. What color is that? Okay, or let's make it 2. Okay, so that is that page, and then the last page, let's just finish this one off. So I'm gonna come in here and get one of the instructors. So let's get that guy, and let's actually okay, now here's the thing. This is let me actually turn off that grid right there so you can see this better. And since this is a PNG image, what I could do is I could take a rectangle and kill the stroke, and in this rectangle I could then add a sort of a gradient, and then this part of the gradient I could make a little transparent so that you get something like that. And what I could also do is I could send this back, or actually select that. Okay, there you go, and perfect. And the other thing that I want to do is just make some movement up here. Okay, maybe I want to move this slightly somewhere around here. Okay, so we need the name of the instructor. So let's actually bring in the name in there, and then I think this is, where is it? Oh, and then there's room here to add some icons. So I'm going to find my icons here. Instructor, camera, instructor, cost, and perfect. We've added the icons there as well. So as you can see, very quickly now we've put together the design here. Actually, you know what, I need one more page in here, so I'm actually going to select the last one, and this is the final. I'm going to press Option Shift and create a copy. Wait until I get those. Perfect. Not perfect. Let's do it again, and there you go. Okay, so now so this is the last page. Once you book, you click on that link right there. This is the link that opens up. So this is the instructor booked page. Okay, and for this page I'm just going to take one of these rectangles, just make that full screen, kill the border. And you notice down here we've got an option for a background blur, so I can actually control the blurriness, and I can actually control the brightness as well for the the behind, so I'm going to just blur that a little bit, and then I'm going to add some text here. Let's say instructor booked, and just center that. I'm going to make this 27. Definitely need to change that. You could also add a drop shadow right there if you wanted to, and then we need another button, so I'm going to copy that, come in here and paste it, bring that down here and just make that a little wider. Okay, and then I'm going to change that to let's surf. Okay, perfect. Just make sure that that's in place. All right, so that is the last page right there, and there we go. So let me just get rid of the grid from all of these pages. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter, but it's just looks a little more cleaner. And so this was our design phase. This is where, you know, now that design is done, the next phase is to build a prototype. So if you notice up here, we've got an option to select prototype. So I'm going to go into prototype mode, and in this mode then I'm going to be connecting all these pages to be interactive. So when you click on that link, I want you to be taken to this page. I want it to be a dissolve. Okay, maybe I want it to be an ease in, and you could pick a duration. I'm going to leave that default for now. And then maybe you click on any of these guys and then are taken to the next page. And in here I could then, you know, this should let's say I want this to slide left, I want it to ease in, and let that be, and then you click on one of these guys and you're taken to that page. I want that to slide left and ease in as well. And then when you click on book, actually, you know what, I'm actually going to click on that instead. Let me just deselect that. Okay, there. Click on that, and then you're taken to this page. Slide left, ease in, looks good. Okay. Then finally, when you say click on Let's Surf, it then takes you back to the first page. I want this to slide from the right, and I want it to ease out instead. Okay. And you know what? We've got some things to add in the design mode before I start finishing up. I just noticed I didn't add any back buttons anywhere, so let's do that now. So I'm going to come back to my where the template was, not this one, the other one. Yeah, this one. Okay, so I'm going to take this right here, copy that, and move to this. Actually save this. And I'm going to just select that and say Control V. That comes in right there. I am then going to add that as a symbol, so that if I wanted to make any changes to it, I could just do that. I'm going to get one here as well, and I'm going to get another one for this page. And let's get one for this page as well. And the whole idea of doing this is just so tomorrow if the client says, hey, you know what, can you change that color from white to, you know, to blue or something? So then you can basically sorry, just a second. Okay, and so what you could do is basically you could come down here, and let's say if I change that to if I select it, that is, there you go, select it, and if I change that to, let's say, red, you'll notice that it changes it red throughout my design. So that's not what I wanted to do, but just to show you how that works. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to need is a back button. So let's actually come back. I could make one as well, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to steal. So let's just take that one right there, say Control C, Command C, come back into the design and get this here, paste that in there, move that in position somewhere around there, change the color, and I'm actually going to copy that, paste that in here, and paste that in here as well. Okay, great. So we've got that covered. So now let's get back into prototype. And this is one of the best parts about this is, you know, you can switch from prototype to design at any point during your workflow, and you can continue to make connections. So let's now come back here. That back button goes in there, slide right, ease out, good. And then this one goes in there, slide right, and that's perfect. And I'll do the same one for this one as well. And there you go. And now let's actually test this out. So if you notice here on the right, top right, there are 3 icons. The first icon looks like a mobile device, and what this lets you do is it allows you to preview your design while you're working on it on your iPad or iPhone, provided it's connected via USB to your machine. Once, let me just show you what that looks like. So I'm gonna actually switch to my iPad here. Okay, perfect. So let me just get out of that. Okay, so you can download the Adobe XD application, which is right here, and this is available for all of Android and iOS. And if you're on Mac platform, then you could just use a USB cord and connect it to your machine, and that would basically open up any XD document that's open. So actually, let me see if I can show you this while showcasing my app. So let me just minimize that. So there you go. As long as I have my project selected here, I can then preview my design. So I can also check the interactivity. So you notice that as I am working here, I can select each one of these and make changes to them and actually test the interactivity. And the other thing that you can do here is that, oh, there you go, okay. And the other thing that you can do here is that I can also, if you're on Windows platform, for example, so if I just press here, you can say browse artboards, and you can actually also open up files that are on the Creative Cloud. So if I just come back here, you notice that if I click on XD documents, you can, if you're on Windows, you can upload your XD file to the Creative Cloud, and then you can open up that document, that XD file, on your phone, Android or iOS, without having to connect it via USB. Of course, the trade-off there is you'd have to download the file, and so it can take a little longer. But with the Mac systems, you can just connect the USB, and then you can have a live preview like what I just showed you. The other way of testing your prototype is the second icon right here, which is this play icon, which basically opens up this simulator, and you can use this to test your interaction as well. So I can see, okay, that looks good. Click on any of these guys, and then we book, and then we take into the last page. Perfect. You'll notice that you also have an option to record or make a recording of your experience interaction here as well. So I can actually record that and just create an MP4 file, which I can then share with my client. Let's say that's done. Let's say stop, and this creates basically an MP4 recording of your design. And the third way of working with this is you could either share that MP4 with the client, or you can also export a PDF version of your project as well. But why would you want to do that? Because out here there's a third option wherein you could actually publish your prototype. And what this does is, let's actually publish that. So I'm going to publish this right now. So it's going to upload this to your Creative Cloud folder on the cloud, and that would then it gives you a link which you could share with your clients, and your clients could comment if they wanted to. So there's two main stakeholders that every designer doing UX work would encounter. One is the client, and the other stakeholder is the developer. So for the client, you can just say, okay, here's the link, say copy link, or you can say open link, and that will then open up your prototype. And your client, you need not have the Adobe XD app, need not even have an Adobe ID. All they need is just a browser, really. And once they've loaded up their your XD your project, they can then preview the entire interaction. They also have an option to add comments if they want to, and that's it. And that's how the review works. And of course, if you make a change to this file, so let's say for example someone asked me to change something here. So let's say I'm coming here and make a change. Maybe they wanted the border to be some other color. So let's say something like that. And if you've made a change and you now want to publish this change, so you could just come back to that same link, and you then get an option to update the link. So if you click update, it'll just update whatever has been uploaded before. Or you can also create a new independent link as well if you wanted to. Okay. So that was the clients, and then you have the other stakeholders, which is the developers. And for the developers, you could come down here and say publish design specs. And so let's just create a public link for that. The design specs is right now still in beta, so the developer would have to sign in or log in order to access your file. So as soon as this is done, click on open link. Like I said, they'll have to sign in. So you can see that I can see all the connections, and then as you can see right here, and they can also click on each of these elements and check out the specs for each one of them. So for example, if there's text, it's going to show you which font was used, which style was used, size, so on and so forth, and also the target for each of those links if they're selecting any links here. Similarly for the other pages as well, each of these elements can be selected, and they can then use this information to start putting together the app in whichever IDE they're using. So that is basically, and we're almost down to an hour here. So that was basically how you can use Adobe CC, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe XD to create a prototype for an application, right from designing wireframes to the final design and then prototype and then sharing it. So I hope this was useful for everyone. Thanks for watching.